and sit down. Shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down.
Adrian, let me know if you can actually hear me. Give me one moment. Oh, perfect. Don't know what I changed there, but at least you can hear me loud and clear, even though I do have an awesome echo going in my ear. There we go. Perfect. Now hopefully you can hear me great. It sounds like Adrian said you can. So let's head back, and so let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about what we're going to do today. Now that you guys can actually hear me. So we're going to actually do a whole bunch of automated UI testing with a program called Cypress, or a framework called Cypress. In this today, it's all going to be about Angular code, but Cypress works across any framework, whether it's React, Vue, vanilla JavaScript, jQuery, Angular, obviously. As long as it can get access to any of the DOM elements, Cypress can do testing. It's fantastic for waiting on your API calls before it proceeds. You can tell it to wait for certain ones if you know you're going to have them. You can mock out all of your XHR requests just in here. So ultimately, what I want to test is a lot of behaviors. That's my goal with UI testing, is behaviors. Unit testing tests business logic. UI test, it's all about the behaviors. If I click on buttons, does my UI change to be what I need it to be? If I click on a navigation, does it go to the page? If I'm expecting certain things on the page, are those things actually there? All of that interaction is what I'm looking for with my UI test. So ultimately, I'm going to mock out a lot of my APIs. So today we'll go through process of setting up our test initially, and then we'll look at how do we actually mock some of those out so that I get standard calls back and standard responses out of my APIs. If we take a look at the app that I'm going to actually use here, this is a sample application I use in all of my Angular workshops. It's a simple to-do application so we can focus on actually coming up to speed on Angular. When you use an application like this in an up and running with Angular workshop where you expect nobody to have Angular knowledge, this is a fantastic app, so they don't worry about business logic, they worry about the Angular, and it's got a lot of common things that you see. It's got a sign up page here. We've got a login page as well. And Adrian, thank you for the follow there. And we also have to-do items in here that we'll see in a list since I've already logged in. And as we can see by the name up in the header, you know you're logged in. You get a log out button. We got our to-do items. I can say it's either not done or it's done. Make it grayed out. Put a line through it with different classes. I can choose to delete all of those pieces as well. It gives us a little prompt here. And I can finally add in new items. And it also sorts them alphabetically here. So we're going to look at testing all of this functionality. I already started with a bunch of tests. I have several conferences coming up where I'm talking about Cypress. So over the weekend, I started throwing in some test cases in here for Cypress, but there's still a whole heck of a lot more to actually throw in there. Let's take a look real quick at what Cypress looks like before we look at the actual code for it. So when you launch Cypress, you get a UI like this that shows you all the different test cases that you have. I like to separate out mine by functionality so you don't have some giant file of test cases. There's nothing like opening someone's test case and having 2,000 lines of testing code. I'd rather have something specific. Get in here and split apart. And once you pick, you can either pick a test or you can pick run all specs. And it'll open up a window that looks like this. It'll show you all of your test cases here, all the groupings that you might have. And Cypress is based off of Karma. So you get the typical describes, you get the typical its that are going on. So if you've ever used Karma in any other language or in any other framework, it'll work just the same way. Here, all the selectors are also jQuery selectors. So for all of us that were around back when jQuery was super popular, all of that knowledge is finally coming back and being useful for testing. And let's just kick off these test cases. We'll see a whole slew of stuff going on in here as it flies through your stuff. And once these are all done, we'll go and look at the specific test cases. And if you have questions, this is all while I'm going through this, feel free to throw them in the chat. If you want to know anything about Cypress or Angular, feel free, or anything else for that matter. So let's take a look at just this first test case. This is looking at navigation, going from our login page to our create pages. And one of the really cool things about Cypress is I can see all the stuff that happened here, and I can click on it, and it'll rewind time basically for me back to what was going on at that point. So I can see I initially visited the login page. It verified that I was actually on the login page. Then it looked for a CSS class on something called .btn-link, which I happen to know is the create button, and it highlights what it actually found for me. And I can make sure my text is actually set right. So in this case, I wanted to say create account. So by testing stuff like the text in here, I can ensure that somebody didn't change it accidentally, because I've actually had that happen at work. Someone accidentally changes something there, or change it thinking it's better, but we're expecting it to be a certain way. Our users are expecting it. So we want to test all of our happy path stuff. I can tell it, click on the actual link. What's really nice here in Cypress is you can see this red dot that's over it. That is actually telling us that's the target that it's going to click on for us. This XHR that you see for this socks.js node, we're going to totally ignore that all day long. Look, this is for the live reload that goes on. So every time I update a test case, it's going to use that piece of it. Not something for our code, so we're just going to ignore it. But what I can see is that it's going to change to a new URL in here, and then I can test my actual expect. So I can in here that my signup page set, or my URL is on the signup page. So really cool that I can actually just go through and see everything that it did in here. It's also got a really cool selector playground. And so if I want to test something, I'm not sure how to find it, go ahead and click on that because I have something highlighted. Obviously it is going to do that. But now if I click on, let me click on that one more time. There we go. So once I have this little arrow highlighted, as I roll over items, it'll give me the actual jQuery selector in here. So as I click on them, it'll actually update the link up here. It puts it on the clipboard for me. And what's nice about the clipboard is not just this text, it's the Cypress get command with that text in there for the selector, ready to go right into my code. Or I can print it out to the console. If I hit F12 and turn the console on, and it'll print out all kinds of stuff. Obviously due to screen resolution, it looks a little wonky in here. So today we'll use the CSS Selector Playground quite a bit to find all of these different items that we actually need, especially when we get over to our to-do item page, because I have not done anything in the to-do space yet. And because this is a browser, I can do all the same stuff in here. Even though my test case is finished running, I can still go through and play with the UI. So this will be fantastic when we want to play with the playground. Even though I haven't wired up these tests, I can still figure out where are these different items in here. Where's the add button? Where's the text box? So we'll see all of that as we go. And coding wise, these tests are really simple. All these tests, all 16 of them, took me including installing Cypress, hooking it up to TypeScript, maybe 2 hours of time to actually use, and quite a bit of that was me trying to remember how does Cypress work, because I hadn't played with it in about 4 weeks, and it was the first time 4 weeks ago that I really had played with Cypress a bunch. But once I got back into it, test cases just came flying in. So let's look at some really simple ones. So the menu is the simplest one that we have. As I mentioned, it's karma based, so we get our describe. This is how we group test. This before says run this before all of these test cases within the describe. And I can do nested describes as you see here. And I could run another before inside it if there. So they have before, which runs before everything. They have before each, which runs before each one of the tests. Then they have after, the exact opposite of before. It runs after all of the tests. And they have after each. In our case today, we're going to mainly use before, just so we can tell it, go and visit. In this case, I want to visit the 404 page. It's a page that doesn't make any API calls, so I don't have to worry about mocking those out or any failures, because all I really want to test is the menu. In each one of our menus, we tested the same things. Did a check the text, make sure it actually says login. And so it's CY, so everything in the Cypress world is based off of CY, so short for Cypress. And I can say give it my CSS selector, and then I start getting into my assertions. So it should have some text, and it should say login on it. I can say have text, I can say equals. Typically when you're testing out the text side of it, you'll say have text. I can test for links and attributes, which is what we're doing here. I say should have an attribute of href. It should include the /login, so this is the URL that it's going to go to. And then in the Angular world, we have this thing called router link, so it'll actually route properly. So make sure it actually has my router link, make sure it goes in the right spot. All of my menu tests look exactly the same here. So sign up text, making sure. So this is just a nice way to make sure I didn't screw my menu up, because I've had that happen. I've had QA send stuff back where somehow we accidentally screwed up a route. We changed a route name thinking, oh, instead of calling it sign up, let's call it create account. Or vice versa, and all of a sudden, QA's like, you broke everything, and because you forgot to update the menu. These will catch those kinds of things. Then looking at the account side of it, very similar for the navigation, so we won't cover it going back and forth, but let's look at some stuff that we have in here for actually testing real accounts. So we're going to ignore record and replay commands. We will cover that probably on Friday. So I'm planning on streaming again on Friday, so you can actually check the schedule down below. But in essence, what the record replay does, it lets me record the output of my API calls so that then I can replay them. And that's how we'll do some of our mocking. And all of the API stuff we're doing today is a sales-based API, and I'm running it locally. So all of these accounts don't actually really exist anywhere except locally on my machine. So first thing we want to do is I want to visit our sign up page, because we actually need to sign up an account. I'm going to verify my URL. Here's where I get my form fields, and then type. So .type says I want to type this into the actual fields. And then I can do some other gets, like get the button, make sure it has the right text, click on it, and keep chaining it. So verify that the URL should include a slash in here. And the better way to honestly do this is to actually do a cy.location, and I believe it is path name. We want to tell it .equal. Notice that I'm not putting the full URL in. So Cypress has a config file here where we can configure our base URL. So all of our calls are going to automatically assume it's at localhost 4200. So I don't have to put the full URL when I'm doing checks in here. So let's comment these two out. Put this in here. And we'll see our test kick back off again. So perfect. So it found the location. So the prime reason that you want to use this location path over should include just says somewhere in my URL I have a slash. It doesn't actually check that my full path equals that. So when I do location path name, then it goes ahead and says, hey, I only expect to be at the home page, which is where this should actually be. So that, and we should actually be able to chain these two together. So let's just check it out, and we can truly chain them like I'm expecting. That is the really nice part with Cypress, is you can chain all kinds of stuff together. The other piece you can do because I'm tired of running all the test cases, say dot only. So it'll only run that test case as we go through and make sure everything's working. And this is a lot longer of a test case than normally I would write. But in the case of signing up, we're going to sign up. It's going to redirect us to our home page. But then we get some additional things like I get the logout button. So now if I log out, I should get redirected to the login page, and then I can test the login page, go back and forth. So that whole flow, kind of need to actually have an account before I can log in. So this is one of the problems that you get with trying to do UI test, where you need some specific data. And so either you try to load up your database, which works great in a single developer environment, but the minute I have more than one developer and I don't have a dedicated test database for them to go against, I start to get into this funky pattern of, do you have the right data in there? Am I polluting some staging database with testing data, which is not something I necessarily want to do, because then I have to do cleanups with it. With Cypress, I totally could actually make an API call and go and insert all of that, or I could call a command line app to go seed my database. But in this case, I'm just going through the whole flow. Let's make sure we don't have any other places where we are checking the URL. So here's one more of them. So URL.location. And it is path name. And it should equal /login. And yep, one more down here. Location, path name should equal. Be back at our home page. I'm going to turn this test case on too, just because I see that we have another place to put location in here. Should equal /login. Click. And every so often, because I'm running TypeScript, I've noticed that the Cypress UI here will go ahead and tell us that something was wrong with it, give you a try again button. 9 out of 10 times, it feels like the try again button fixes it. And so now let's click on run all specs. Because I have the 2 dot onlys, I should only see 2 test cases here. It takes a sec to pop this in here. Oh, looks like I do actually have an error on line, looks like 49. Let's see what line 49 has on it. Oh, forgot to tell it .should. Close that one out. And we will reopen. Looks like now I get to do some troubleshooting of what did it not like? Let's take a look up here. Should include. Location path name should EQ. Actually, let's get rid of all of these URLs. And when all else fails, we're going to kill Cypress and we will restart it. So Cypress open, we'll bring that UI back up here in a sec. We'll see if it truly is an error. I've noticed every so often what I think is an actual error is not truly an error. It just hasn't processed correctly all of the TypeScript stuff. A sec for our test case to show up here. There we go. We got our one test case. Why did our other one not show up? So we have dot only. We will find that out here in a moment. Way that you could put multiple dot onlys, but we will see if we do the describe if we get both of them. Well, at least that brought both of them in, so we'll run with that for now. Perfect. So got that refactoring done, but I've also noticed a few other places here where we have the same URL piece here. Do location, path name. Do dot Q. Path name include or equal. Well, at least I was consistent that I did it in every place I needed it. And let's actually find out if you need the slash in front of it, 'cause I am not sure. So I'm still learning Cypress as well. It's kind of funny that I have conference talks coming up on it, but like most speakers that are doing conference talks, and it's the first time I'm doing this talk, it is actually something that I am still working on learning and implementing on all of my projects. So, got location, path name. If I have any other place for URL, I do not. This time I get all of my test running. Yep, and so you do need the slash in front. For that one test case we were trying out did fail. So let's go and put that slash in the front here. Name should equal. Again, the nice part with using the path name, it will ensure that it exactly matches what the URL should be, not just that it includes some bit of a string. Perfect. So back up and running with that piece. Also take a look at, I use GitKraken for checking everything in. Let's look at actually getting some stuff caught up here. Actually unstage everything and see where we were at. So these were all from sample records. So those in there. I actually got rid of all of the examples. So Cypress comes with a slew of examples. Actually, on stage, let's get rid of all of the example files here. And I like to go through as I'm get something working, go ahead and actually check it in. Actually, I like to check them in as well in commits that they belong inside of. Put all of our record replay stuff in here. we're going to leave our environment files alone for now. Okay, so now on to actually looking at testing some of the to-do items in here. So let's bring up our playground here. So start with, let's open the Selector Playground. Let's see, where do we want to start with our actual testing here? I think we're going to test out the add first, because that's the easiest one to test out. Then I don't have to worry about, does whatever user I log in actually have data or not. It looks like because I only have one form control, this is the easiest place for me to actually get data or to get access to that control. So toss that. And let's do our describe. Call it add to do. Let's think through this. This is going to be a harder one to potentially test, because normally you have to log in order to do or to get access to that home page. So one of the things that the application does is ensures you can only see your actual to-do items. So this is where mocking really kind of comes into play a bit. So when you want to mock out a request, you're going to actually do a cy.server. Then we're going to do a cy.route. And we're going to give it some info here. URL. And here's where our network tab is going to come in handy. So call it test 3. And let's take a look at our actual payload looks like and what our URL looks like. Actually, we don't need the request payload as much as we need what is the URL. So /to-do. So we do need the response. And we'll say status 200 because we were expecting it to be successful, and we'll give it a name so I can actually refer to this a little bit later. So now that we have this set up, and we can actually we're going to actually tell it to wait. So we're going to say add to do. So in the typical testing setup mindset, so this is our setup area. This is our assertions. Actually, that was our setup. This is our test area and assertions. So the first thing we need to get is the form control. Add some text. Click the button. And then verifications, I'm going to verify it got added to the table. And we'll just keep it a simple verification, should actually for now. Okay, so let's look at how do we get our form control. We actually saw that in our selector a bit ago. Grab that off the clipboard. So cy.formControl.type, and we'll call it test 3 because that's the response we're going to expect to get back. Actually, let's throw this below all of our comments, because we're going to chain these together. So we got our type. So we type that in there. Now we want to get access to the button. We'll say should have text. Yeah, we'll say that should have text. And there's add. Say and dot click. We'll fix our formatting a bit. Once we click on it, this is where we want it to wait for that API to finish. So because I started up the Cypress server, I gave it a route of to do. It should run through this route if I've set everything up right. And to actually put our, one thing I did miss, totally skipped over. I actually need a it statement here. Because you can't run stuff right out of the describe. There we go. So now say dot only, and let's take off the dot only off our describe. Thought we had a spot with dot only. Good, only one. As cool as dot only is, I really wish there was a UI for Karma that allowed you to check which ones you want, because inevitably you're going to at some point in time check dot only in. Then you're going to wonder why your test in your CI server is only running a few things. Looks like we have a failure in our, and that's because I've actually got that set up. So let's turn that off. But I didn't tell it where to visit. So I'm going to tell it to visit our home page. And I'm going to bet you that's going to redirect us. Exactly. So what we would have done is check the URL, but here. But let's go ahead for now, because we're not mocking all of our stuff out and we're not assuming that we're logged in. Let's just run through our login code here. So we'll just say visit login, because I know that's where I'm going to ultimately get redirected. And let's snag some code out of our account one. And the highly secure password here of 123456. So now our location, path name, should equal our home page. And now I can run through all of my test cases. Kind of funny sitting in the room that I'm sitting in. There's a giant glass wall just off to the side that everybody gets to walk by since it's in the main walkway. And there's no on-air light in the room that I'm at. I'm at a co-working place in Chandler called Gangplank. Today, streaming out of there since they have fantastic internet. And somebody, of course, walked by and kind of doing the motion of, "You online?" "Yes, I'm on air." So let's look and see, what did we actually break here? So it looks like it couldn't wait for the @ to do. So let's take a quick gander at that. So we started our server up. We set up our route in here. Let's change this. And we're going to run back through this scenario again. May have just been as simple as it didn't have the right piece in there, but it does not look like it. Now the fun part of troubleshooting the why. Actually, I'm going to cheat a little bit here. We're going to go back and look at some previous tests here, because I was doing all of that at one point in time before I started doing record and replay. And hopefully I was nice enough to myself and checked it in. Not in that one, so I may not have. I did not. On to troubleshooting some stuff. So CY.route. Take a look at our record replay just because we have the same command down here. Route method. Ah, that's what I'm forgetting up here. By default, it waits for a get, and we are actually doing a post. Let's rerun this again. Looks like it ran before I even got back. Yep, so we can see it waited for our to-do item before it continued on. So let's actually write some test in here. See if we can actually get access to our table. It's nice enough to show us the inspect, which it is not. So let's go back to default Chrome and see if I can find where does that thing actually start. There's rows. So here's where we could actually test to see how many items we had the first time and then how many items we have afterwards. So we are going to get, let's see, row to do. So cy-get row to do. Been a while since I've had to actually test one of those. And pull something up off screen here, and we're going to take a look at a bit of code. I know where the code is at. It is in my backpack in my flash drive. Let's see if I can find this mini flash drive here. So I always find when I'm learning new stuff, if I've figured it out once, ultimately I end up using that code over and over, and that is what I am looking at here. I have already looked at some links for some various pieces here. So we can test how many it should have, but we want to get how many it currently has. I know I have code for this. Well, we're going to run with, let's see, we want to go with, We'll say should include, and we will say test 3 for now. Not a horribly specific test, but let's see if it at least tested and comes back with data. Looks like it did not find our row dot to do. Should have dot length. See, it should have dot length, and it should be right in here actually. So we know that one's going to actually fail, well, since we have more rows than that. But what I'm really looking for is to make sure I actually have the div row to do. Perfect. Yep. So it says 6 more, has a length of 1, but got 7. So here's one of the problems that notice we're encountering as we're testing. We keep adding in more and more items here. We're obviously going to have issues if I try to say, hey, I expect there to be 3 default ones, and I keep adding one, if I don't actually have a delete test in there. But let's see now so now that we know we have this piece in here, I wonder what our selector actually looks like. Have Ruth and child. Wonder what dot row dot to do. Okay. Well, that gives me the first column, so that is kind of cool, but that is not quite what I wanted. So we want, what is this whole thing called? Dot container. It has been ages since I've truly done jQuery selectors. But if we do this, and let's try this here. Dot, how do we get the first item? That is a great. Actually, we want to get the last item. So let's actually try this. I forgot there's a dot last. And we should say should have dot text test 3. And because we are adding in date columns into here, and there's no, looks like there's no separation here with this. Let's take a look. Well, for now, we will, so we can get this test done, we will say include. That's getting really specific. How do we just say should include some bit of text in here? That is a Great question. So because we haven't put names on these, they're really difficult to find some to actually throw a name onto here. Let's go into our component here, in our to-do. And let's see, so that's the first column. So here's our text column. So we'll say data-cy equals to-do-text. So now that I have that, I can come back in here and say .find. Actually, I can probably say .get to-do-text. And we'll say should have that. And this one's going to fail because I saved the test before I saved the component. Let's see, expected to find element. Helps if I actually throw the attribute in there correctly. With a closing bracket. Unrecognized expression. Give that a whirl. And it's actually, there we go. So it is still getting all of the text in here because we're adding our date into here. Let's take a look at our item text pipe. Just gotta find where our pipe is at. Shared pipe. Let's see what we are truly doing. Okay, so we're adding our text, and we're adding a small, and we're putting in the date time in here. So let's say .find .inner text. Actually do a Cypress inner text. Actually, I have this cool, found this cool example site that Cypress has. There's a little bit of a kitchen sink in here. So let's look at some assertions. So we can do .contain. That's one way to get around this issue since we have a date in here. Let's try that. Perfect. So that made it pass. It found that we have the text in this actual row. What's difficult about this test is we don't necessarily know the order. So if it just happens to be that the user that we're using has more stuff in here, then obviously we're going to, and its stuff is after this. Like if I do this, it's going to go at the very bottom. So we're going to obviously, our test is a little bit brittle right now. So let's see if we can make our test unbrittle. So technically we are posting back all of our stuff, so we could could ensure the test always comes first, but let's see, do we have an ID value anywhere in here that we can capture? So I don't know that we spit the ID value out any place. We do not. So let's just do an experiment here and see if I say to do dash, and we'll call it to do item dot, might be all lowercase, but take a look here, it is lowercase. I don't believe that will actually work, but we will find out. So I put both brackets in there though. Let's see. Can't bind to CY. It's not known property, obviously. Let's see what it did over here. Throw binding error. Let's see, what can I do to fix that? Let's try this. Not that I think that's any better or will work at all. We're kind of hacking that a little bit. At least it rendered. So let's actually see what it did here. Yeah, did exactly what I thought it was going to do. It rendered the full text for me. Of course, I know it's not an actual attribute it recognizes. We at least put to do on here so that actually, because we have row to do, we don't need a dedicated one on there. It's enough hacking on this piece of it. All right, let's take a test. We found our form control. We had some text, not test. We click the button. We got some assertions. So right now we're saying, grab the last row, find me my text field, and it should contain the text test3 in there. So technically that is a fully passing test. No, the bad side about drinking out of a giant bottle, it is a growler size water bottle, is that every so often you spill. But it at least ensures that I get all of my actual water in for the day. I find if I don't have that giant bottle, especially when I'm not at home and have easy access to water, that I only drink like a glass or two, because that's all my other water bottles hold, is about 16 ounces. But this thing holds way more water than that, and so I end up getting my water for the day, or a good majority of it. But it is a really full water bottle because it's 3 in the afternoon and I've not nearly had enough water for today. All right, so back to our test here. So at this point, we've got our test working. If I go and look actually at our API, you can see here but I'm not actually calling the post into our API. So if I actually refresh this page, we will see that we're not continuing to add in new data. So let's get rid of a few of these, just kind of prove out that fact. Let's run through the test case here. And if I refresh this, I should not see a test 3 if I'm truly mocking it out. And so because we have, go back and look at our test, we've set up our server and we set up our route. So this intercepts our post and returns back this response without actually contacting that. So I'm the Legend. Thank you for the follow. Much appreciated. Welcome to the family. Today we are going through and talking about Cypress and Angular and writing a whole bunch of UI tests for this sample app that I use for a lot of my conference talks, and I use it for my Angular workshop. And so Cypress is a great utility for that. We've got a few tests we've already written in here, and the one we're working on right now is actually adding in new to-do items into our UI here. And you can ask anything that you would like to ask. And so looking at our test case here, we started our server, we've got our route going. We're mocking out our post route, returning back a hard set response here for it, finding our control, clicking our button, waiting for our API call to finish, and then testing that it actually got added. Right now we're just assuming based off of what the user that we're logging in has, that it's text actually at the bottom. That is not, unfortunately, a guaranteed thing to be here. I'm a Legend. You wanted to know how to see the IP address on someone you speak online with. That is not something that I necessarily know. I can tell you how to get your own IP address, but not necessarily the IP address of other people. A quick Google search, I'm sure will pull up the IP address. I am not going to do that, obviously, on stream right now. But a quick Google search of how to find someone's IP, I guarantee there's websites out there that you can have the person go to and they will tell you what their IP is, but off the top of my head, that is not something I normally look up, is what other people's IPs are. So let's think about how to refactor this test case a bit. So some things I could tell it to do is just to make sure somewhere in the row of to-do items we get this text. And also if I go over here and let's actually snag a bit of code here. So let's call this to-do text. And we'll throw in to-do text here. And we'll have it entered. So even though I'm entering stuff into here, because I'm mocking out the response, it's never truly going to get there, but we want to be consistent. To-do text. There we go. So now if we go run this, so we can see it threw in some unique text in. So every time this test case runs, it's going to throw in the same unique text into here. And I'm going to see about changing our music up a little bit, even though we're listening to the Pretzel Rock Station. Let's see what else they have. Let's see how this works for a bit. Alright, so now that our test case isn't nearly as brittle as it was, it's at least verified that when we add something in, it gets into the table here. So let's clean up our comments here. So one thing I'm not a super huge fan of is code comments when the code is obvious. I always feel like if the code's not obvious, then you need to go through and look at refactoring to make it way more obvious. Let's see, so we got our login. At some point, we will come back at a later date and time, and we will refactor this piece out. I didn't actually make it so that we're mocking our login so that we don't have to go through this login rigmarole every time. But for now, we're going to run with this. We'll take our dot only off of here. So now let's look at interacting with some of our form validation. So we can see if I only type in, actually that's good. If I only type in one item, then I get this error that says must be at least 3 characters. Alright, so back to our, actually take our selector off because I need to at least type in an item. So dot alert. Let's create another test case here. And we'll call it min length. And we're going to do a little refactor here, and we're going to say before, and we're going to actually run this piece of it before our first test case. That way we don't have to do that over and over. So now if we find our form control, we'll type in 1 character here. And we should now, so we typed in 1 character, we'll say dot get, dot alert, that should have dot text. And what does our text actually say? Item must be at least 3 characters. It did not quite find what we wanted. So one of the things that .have text looks at is the exact match. If you look really carefully, see if I can zoom in a little here, you can see there's actually a space at the start of this. So I know exactly where that comes from. So we go to our to-do component. Let's take a look at our actual validation here, which that one is actually here. Actually, I'm not total. It doesn't come out of there. Where it comes out of is how it's actually formatted in the HTML. So because I've nicely formatted my HTML, it automatically sees a space in the front of it. So let's get rid of that space. Let's also run the formatter, make sure it doesn't come back. Because every so often I've noticed I run the formatter and it comes right back. Which, well, that one was there. Where did the other error go? Perfect, it kept it right there. So, and our test. Let's see, rerun our test because our test didn't get updated. Angular did. So perfect. So now we're testing our min length. The other one we want to test is the required attribute, and it's the same dot alert. So let's go back here. We'll save that. Let's go back to our test cases here and take off our dot only. CY get. Actually, we're just going to copy one. And I got to give it a name. We're going to rename this one too and call it validation. And let's get the text that we need. Item is required. Let's see, it can't accept an empty string. Well, let's take a look at how we can fix that. See, I know there is a way to clear those or to type in something, but actually I wonder if I just tab out of this, refresh this page so I can reset everything. So I can't type an empty string. Let's see, how do you set the value of the control? It's got some code here on the side that I'm glancing through to see if I have an example of how I've done that before. There we go, that should take care of that. So dot clear, so I type in the box and I clear it out. Oop. Have to type some text in. Perfect. So the key there was type in some text, remove it all out so that the required validator actually fails. The other test we can tack onto here is what happens if we type in 3, and then we should say .get.alert. And actually, we want to say, let's separate these out and not just keep chaining. So get.form-control. Type that in there. Then we want to get the alert again. Actually, we want to say dot should not be visible dot alert. We'll do the same thing here on the required one. I want to make sure we at least have more than 3 so that we can make sure it doesn't trigger. But you could also put in, like here, and make sure that it goes from required to validator, or from required to min length. So it kind of goes through the whole flow just to make sure it works as expected. So type in one character, clear it out so you get the required. Type in one item, check that the text is at least what the min length one is, and then go ahead and type in enough characters and it goes away. And actually, we want to actually clear it out in between. But first we actually have to tell it get.alert. So we'll say clear, so that'll trigger the required validator again. And because we want to reset it back to having the required validator actually show up in here, that way we can make sure we go from required. If we type enough characters, all the validation goes away. I know I tried dot only on 2 things earlier and it didn't work. We're going to try it once more just to see. And it looks like same issue again. Okay, it failed on, so we expected not to be visible. And I'm betting I did not get the right control. Yes. So dot alert. I know I used this. So so get alert. I'm gonna say get alert and let's take the dot only off here. I'll just leave it. I was gonna put it in a nested describe, but that's a little too much nesting. So we'll just trigger all the stuff. We'll put dot only up here. So Unseen NRG, thank you for following. Pleasure to have you here. See how our test case came out. Have text add, but was add with a space in front of it. So let's take a look at where did I test that out. Don't know that I truly tested that button at all. Add to do before each. Oop, I had it minified then. Do it contains. Okay. Should contain column content. Should match. Let's look at what else is in here. PTN done. Or I can just go fix the actual button. Again, that is just a formatting item here. Perfect, so we've got all our validation passing here. And we know the things that should be right on there. The thing I want to do is look at we're going to refactor at some point to get rid of these pieces. So if I actually go to my sales API, go ahead and stop this. And let's actually delete our temp directory since everything's stored in memory. We'll restart it. When I refresh this, we should see first I gotta log in and I know none of the accounts exist. we got no to-do items in here. So now let's run through this. Let's make sure it all still works since I cleared the data out. Perfect. And if I refresh this, because we're mocking, you'll see no data actually is in there. But here's the really cool thing, because even though it got a response back, we've at least got text in here. So let's dot lead, huh? So I think adding a to do in we got one last thing that we want to test in here. We want to make sure that we actually have the to do item being added. Number to complete. And we'll say dot should have dot text. And what is our text for it? And I think I already see a bug in my grammar here. Because when you only have one item in here, you should only say you got one thing, not things. Let's run through all of these. I'm betting that's again a spacing thing. Let's see if I can find how many we've got to do here. So here's the downside of nice HTML formatting. It puts spaces technically in front of items, even though it's got multiple spaces. It sees it down as one space. So we're gonna cheat a little here because I'm tired of playing that losing battle. Expected paragraph lead to have text. You've got one things to do. Oh, looks like there's a space at the end too. Not so sure we need the space at the end, but that's again line break at the next side. So here's where we were going to say should contains. Actually, I think it's just contain. Let's take a look. Yes, keep wanting to put the S on the end of it, but it is contain. So here we can do the same thing. And we brought back this bug because I reformatted my text. Let's make sure all the rest are contain. So have.text is an exact match versus contain just looks for the text to be there but doesn't care about other text. Here. So let's go see if we can refactor our test a little bit. But here, the fact that if I put a dot only on number to complete, it is going to fail right now because it's dependent on other test cases, which is not a great test case. You want your test to be as independent of each other as possible. Like the min length and the required to work without the number completed, but this one requires you to actually have at least a to-do item in there, and right now we don't have any to-do items actually in there. And even though normally I would say if I was unit testing, this would be a great thing to keep as a separate test case. But because I'm doing user interactions, I don't want to have to build up adding in a to-do item just so that I can test the completed items. But I may. Let's think through this a bit. So let's think about what test cases are we going to write. So I'm going to write one to complete the to-do item. I'm going to write one to also delete the to-do item. I'm going to also write one to add in a second to-do item in here where I increment this value, and I'm going to also test that that value gets decremented as I complete items. So you see if I complete my item, then obviously because we're not mocking stuff out and the item doesn't truly exist and we're not truly logged in, you're getting a 403 error there. But that'll go away once we mock it up, everything out. So we've got one item. So in order to test these two items, I'm going to have a to-do item in there. Now I could, do we keep growing this test or not? So my worry is that I don't want my test case to get out of control. I mean, I'm already at probably, see, line 16 through 46. So I'm already at what, 30 lines of code? We're starting to get kind of that limit of doing too much inside of a to-do item here. But what we could do is move this piece up into the before item. We can make this one, because it's just at the end of the day JavaScript, with that one top of the describe. So now we've at least set up our server in our route here. Let's think about this. Could also do a request. Let's see what the request looks like. So response body makes it. Can we do a post request? Actually, I wonder if there's a kitchen sink example. So let's look at network request. So we've got servers, we've got request. So mix next HR. So route responses. So let's look at the actual Cypress docs and see what, a little bit more in there. Request. Okay, so you can make a post request in here. So what I was thinking is, instead of just watching that we do a post, we could actually set up a post request in here, so to always create the to-do item for us. So in the case of something like this, let that out for now. So this one was used to actually, when I do the click on the button, we want to mock out the post request. But do I want to go through the whole UI process each time to add in an item? Because this is just mocking the request. But for everything else, I don't want to have to copy these lines of code in there just to say, go and add a to-do item. So what I can do is just set up a method actually that calls the request for us. say add to do. Actually, let's think how we want to do this. I'm thinking we might just take this response for now, just so we can get something working. I'm going to just call it add response. Give it that piece. And now we can just say add response. So let's make sure that didn't break anything. Okay, nothing's broken. So now we could go down here. Let's take a, here, we do, let's do post slash to do. Actually, what are we posting up? Response. We want to look at our headers. Here's what we were actually sending. We'll find out here in a moment if, because we are already doing the route, whether it will actually, I don't even need this. Let's just see if I do CI wait at add to do. I love how every so often my TS-lint and prettier settings get reversed of each other, especially when I have quotes inside of quotes. TS-lint wants it to go the other direction. For now, we're just going to run with this. So let's take off the dot only there. Let's put it on this test case. Just see what happens. I'm anticipating it's just going to wait forever because we're not truly calling that. Yep, because we never actually made a request to it. Let's just see what happens. Ooh, blew up on me. Failed on not found, which is kind of what I expected it to actually be. Because request goes off to the actual API where let's turn back on our other test case so we can inspect the network tab. Interesting, because I'm intercepting that one. You can see the URL actually changed for it. So that's our get command. Here's our post. Interesting that my URL route here is different than my URL route down here. Because this would make sense that I can't post to that. Because /to-do obviously is not in my, or isn't something that's at localhost. It's at the API. Because I just want to get moving this test, I will look at refactoring in a bit. Let's just see what that does. I have a feeling I might end up with 2 items because the other test case ran. Didn't end up with any. I bet you, I wonder if it's because I already waited for this to happen. I can't wait for it a second time. Let's just try the before each just to see if it fixes it. Yep, that totally fixes it, but that's not quite the pattern that I would want. I just want to see what happens. If I move my test, does it actually move in the test runner? It does. Wow. I'll be order of test. How can I run all tests in order without rename the file as? So you should need to run. Choosing the anti-pattern, which is exactly what my assumption is as well. So what else is in here? When running live test, we're now resorting to labeling our test folders. This is talking more about running multiple test suites in a given order. Let's look at best practices. Looks like there's an ordering here. Do a search for order. If you were to put in only any of these 3 tests, they would fail. Each test requires the previous one to run. Take a look. Example of what not to do. So first name, last name, submit. Okay, combine into 1 test. Okay. Run shared code beforehand. Yep, so trying to keep these separate is a little bit of an anti-pattern as we look at their best practices. And so let's look at, so we could definitely chain all these together, and that might actually be really the right answer. And I kind of agree with that. It felt like as I was going through and doing this, it's like I need all of the stuff in the add to do item here in order to get everything working. Let's just chain this together. The other thing we can do is we can actually move this back into this method, because none of our other test cases right now are actually running through this. Here, I want to combine in completing and deleting an item. That's a great question. Well, let's stay focused on this piece. See if we can wrap up a few of these test cases here. So save that out. So we got our adding of our to-do item in here. We're going through our before each, which navigates us over. So let's take a here. So we validate that our text is right. We validate our to-do items here is in here. other thing we should validate here is that this text box or checkbox has the right icon on it. Come on, there we go. Playground's giving me issues here. Come on. Alright. Let's just add in an item here. Actually, turn off the playground. Log out. Come on, turn off. As cool as the playground is, every so often it obviously breaks. There we go. Scoot this over. And let's see. Which item do we have here? Check square. Compare these two. They are different, and they are not showing up as different because it's basing it off of class. So we need to look at what is different between these two. So dot completed. Pull that over into here. So this is where, because we're testing visibility of items in here, and we're testing that when we insert an item that it doesn't have a completed status, this is a spot where we really do need to know that very first row. So let's just, so if we say this, so that first, so we get the first row in there. Look at that. So now we can also .get. Totally sure that that is the items that we want. You have. Okay. Separate these out a bit. Having them, even though I can chain them together, kind of awkward to chain them together because they're not truly related to each other. In this one we want to, so we want to find let's look at what options we actually have here. So find back this and see. So FA icon on SVG. The icon, check square and square. Okay. So if we go here, we're sending a FA icon. Get row.to-do and child. And child 1 actually give us. And child 1 FA dash. Actually, and child 1 FA dash icon. Under FA icon, we have an SVG. SVG. We want data icon equal data dash icon equals check square. Square. Okay, how do we? It's always the tough part about finding these selectors. We need the FA icon, but we want the actual icon inside of it. Of course, they're all SVGs, which are more difficult to get. See it found that one. jQuery PG. jQuery selector. Ah, that might actually work. Back to our test case here. So we're already on our oops, put it in the wrong spot. First row should contain text. First row dot find and child svd svg. What I don't want you to find. Should have dot attribute data dash icon. Just look at that Stack Overflow again. So find.attr should contain, what should it equal? Check dash square, so it should equal just square. Text. HTTPR is not chainable. Querying. Alright, so let's data dash icon equals let's just see what happens if I put this in. What to do? FA dash icon. Icon. Let's see. Data dash icon equals there we go. See, first row. So let's put our data attribute on here. So if we go back up here, find our icon, so do we want to, we can put it on the div or we can put it on the icon. We're going to do it on the div for now. Call it check icon. Data-CY equals trash icon. So now if we say first row, we do data-CY equals check dash icon, the FA icon that should be dot visible. Not dot be visible. Let's give that a try. I'm tired of watching all the other tests run in here. Put the dot only on this. Helps if I save the HTML as well. Pause. Test item. It is because we're to test out, I was using that dummy account. Okay, still didn't find my icon though. Found my text. So let's take a look here. Do data CY check icon. That's side by side here with my HTML. So data-CY. So we got check dash icon. See if it's a selector problem. It is not. So let's do this. Let's do data-CY equals check dash icon, and let's just see if we get anything in here. I didn't even finish my unit. It already popped. SVG. We'll do data-icon equals check. So what is the data-icon then? Throw this item back in here. Data-icon. let's try, so I can get icon that way. Let's try. Let's change that to a get. Data icon. Actually, let's comment that one out because that's looking for the other box. Here's some text here. Should have .text, .text, square, and it should be visible. There it goes. Starting to wonder if my NG server was hung up. Rerun that again, so I'm only expecting one item in there. Expected to find element, but never found it. Interesting. I don't want more. Copy that over. Should have .text square. That should be .visible. In there. I expected SVG inline to have text square. Ah. So. Okay. Let's look at the assertions here. Text, contain text, match, text, text. You know what, we already did something similar to this. Let's look at the menu. Just close that one. Now let's look at the menu. There we go. now we should be able to say so it's going to include square. And see if that syntax is right. Alright, see if this will work. So let's just see. Actually, I wonder. Cypress font, awesome. Let's see here. Let's see if Fine has anything in it. Quick glance through, that'd be a big no. Right. Sorry for the squeaky chair if you can hear that. That it is not a great chair in the co-working space that I'm in, but it is one of the better ones. Let's see. Data-cy, so it's finding the icon, but how do I actually... What I do is get it so that it finds something within the icon that's unique. And I could attempt to look at the ng reflect icon prop. It's kind of like a hack. I could also throw a class in there. But what is the best way would be to get this data icon attribute. attribute value. Input, invoke. That could work. Oh no, I should have href. Back here and play with this a bit more. Hey, there we go. Okay, we have now been streaming for, about 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it is time for a little hydration break and a bathroom break. So we will be right back in just a few moments. looks like my microphone was muted after we came back, so I apologize for that. So anyone that happens to be watching the recording later of this, basically I was saying our to-do test here, we were done for the most part. We're going to move on to writing the completed test, and we'll look at writing a deleted test at some point in time, maybe today. Okay. And then we're checking our stuff in with Git Kraken, which we actually checked our stuff in. I like Git Kraken for my Git UI. It could do everything from the command line, but it's just a nice UI to tell me where stuff is at. So let's look at writing a complete test. Let's get rid of these comments. Let's actually amend our last commit. All right, minimize that. And I am going to put this actually in a, I've already got a scribe, but we're going to change this to scribe name, and we're going to move all of this into an embedded describe here. So I'm going to say describe, add to do. This way we have our to-dos, or our add to-do item here as its own separate grouping, and everything that goes with it, all of our validation and everything else. And then we can add in a scribe here, complete to-do. And because of the way that the nested describes work, it's going to run this before each that's part of this describe, and then it's going to look down here to say, do I have any of the befores, before eaches, and then it will run them. In this case we don't have any nested ones, but we could. And once we turn on the record replay and get that actually working, we will actually have nested before and after, because that's how the record replay works. It says before all the test, wire up everything to do the recording, and after the test, write the files. So let's complete our item here. Let's think about how we are going to complete our item. And I don't want to keep growing our add test, but we got to essentially do this portion of it in order to get an item on the home page. So chat room, what do you think? Keep growing our add test, or should I pull out these pieces into its own separate function, like the server, the route, adding in an item? Well, I know I don't want to keep growing this test because it could get pretty big. I mean, this is a really small app. We start looking at all the edit function you could do in a bigger app. You don't want just a giant 100, 200, 400 line file. You want to keep these small enough that you can maintain them. So one thing I'm going to definitely move out. Let's move out our server piece actually into our, move it up here in our before each. At least we start our server up. what we could do here, take advantage of the before each. So we could keep nesting this before each here. Show what our top to-do item. We are. Okay, so we're going to log in. We're going to add a to-do item, and then we're going to run through our test. Which makes sense, more sense now, because everything we need to do on this needs to have at least a to-do item in here in order for us to actually run a test. So now that we have a single item here, we can look at, let's get the first row. One thing I'm distinctly noticing is that we are missing this. So we want to make sure in our to-do item that we are finding or making sure that the checkbox isn't already checked, because then it would do the exact opposite of what we want it to do. So not be visible. So let's look at the network call for this. So we are going to say route, method, I think it's a patch. Yep, we're going to say patch, say URL. We're going to do say to do slash star. The response is going to just be okay. We're going to say dot click on this, and we do a alias this do dash complete y dash wait at to do dash complete, and let's go grab this bit of code. And we're going to say be visible. And we're going to also say not be visible to the previous one. And not going to run our test because, well, we actually had it only on there. And let's just see where we're at with this. Hey, success. Nice to have that on the first try. And I don't know that we actually need it in a... We want it in a nested. Yeah, because we're going to create one more test. Actually, we're not going to create one more test. We're going to do it right in this test because everything's already set up with the right state. So now if we do this piece, actually, so if we do wait again. And so now we should be back to this state. Because essentially that is a toggle. Let's toggle to completed, toggle to uncompleted. Now it ran so fast that I don't even get a double check here that it actually completed it. So we started off with here, we inserted our item, our row, got our item here. We clicked on it, waited for it. We can see that it is done. We clicked on it again, waited, and it unchecked it. So perfect. One piece I don't know about is, do I actually have to reset this route a second time? Let's see what happens if we take that out. Looks like we did not need that piece. Go ahead and take off our dot only here. We don't accidentally check it in. We had one failure in our create. Count. Why did we? Timeout. Let's turn on. Let's do this. Let's go to the console. It looks like our login can actually failed. I thought we were mocking that out. So let's double check. That was the create account verify header. Record replay. We do not have a put call in here. So let's look at our network tab here. What is the response? There we go. Method put data status 200 and alias login. All right, and throw that in there. Let's rerun our test. So basically what that did was set up, or should have set up, a mock for that put request. But it is looking like that's a big no for that. Well, let's put a dot only on this one. Make sure we're actually setting it up. Yep, method URL. Let's make sure the URL was actually right. User/login. That would help. There we go. So at this point, I should be able to stop this and let this test run and not have any issues. Because everything should be mocked out for this one. And it is. So let's actually check that in. So that was a fixed put not being mocked for login. And what did I do? I checked in the dot only. Thankfully, it's all local, so we'll do a little append. And we'll amend our previous one. Yep, and I can see there's some issues going on because not everything is actually mocked out. I would have the reason this isn't mocked out is because we haven't set up our record replay yet. So let's actually set that up. We will set that up on Friday. So for now, if I just start up my sales lift, wait for that to start up. Normally it starts up quicker than that. There we go. Let's rerun these tests. So they take a little bit longer now because we're going against an actual API, even though it's all local on the machine. And as well, something is pegging my CPU right now. Let's just see all of these finish. I want to also go fix our before each here. There is no reason that some of these tests need to go through the login process again. So let's actually take advantage of before. And let's do our actual login just once. And before each, we can set up our post command. See if that speeds up our test a little bit. Last time it took about 60 seconds. A bunch of that was the login process. Some pages make sense to do login, especially when you're testing the login process. There is no need when we're already on the home page to continue to actually add in items. And we can see as part of that, we actually made 5 calls to add in stuff. So let's take a look at what we are doing here. Do we want it to be... We actually might want everything in there before. Yes, because we are... Right now we're going through and adding in a to-do item so we have something to test. So what we could do is actually move some of this stuff to where it goes. Think about this. Because we're going to use this in multiple places. Granted, we could create a function for this. And we will look at that on Friday. But for now, let's just put everything in a before. So we'll just run once. Because we only need to create one to-do item for the test that we're running. We can refactor it later to add in multiple to-do items because we're going to do that for the number of items that we need completed test. Way faster not doing the login multiple times. 60 seconds back down to 16 seconds. And so with that, I think we are golden for today. We got a bunch actually accomplished. We got the home page, adding in items. We've got the add button here. I can also see another test that we need to write in here. So let me add that into my notes here for the home page. So home page. We want to make sure, actually we'll put these, there we go. Sorry about that. We want to make sure that the form or the input field is cleared after adding. And I believe it is, but we didn't test for that. And this is left here most likely because the last thing to run was the required validation, but we didn't put that test in there. I'm going to add a delete test. I want to add in multiple items and then test completion order. To do first and completed second. We also want to test the strike through class. Strike through class and gray classes on there. We want to test the text for number of items to complete. We also want to modify the complete test to check for the number of items is decremented, because we did not check that, but we can see here if we go back to our completed item, we should actually see, we actually saw it got 0 items, so it is updating. We just didn't actually test for it, so we will test for that. Decremented and on complete, and check for the number of items is incremented on incomplete. And for the delete test, we want to test that they clicked OK for the alert, and test they clicked cancel for the alert. And the alert I'm talking about is this prompt. We're not logged in, so let me add a to-do item in here. Because I restarted it, our session state is in memory. So when you go to delete an item, it pops up this dialog here. Actually, if you want to delete, cancel obviously leaves it alone. Deleted will get rid of it. that's all things for our home page. And we will look at doing those on Friday, and we're also going to cover the record and replay setup for the home page. So got a ton accomplished today. So very happy with where we are at with our code. All of our stuff is actually checked in. Actually, I take that back. All of our stuff's not checked in. So let's swap back and let's actually check in our remaining items. So we added to do and complete its Cypress test. Let's add that in there. Let's also push this up to our GitHub repository. Hey Jack, how are you doing? I'm just getting ready to wrap up. We did a whole bunch of coding today on Cypress and added a whole slew of tests in. And so we built out our test suite here. So we're up to 20 tests. And so we can run through. So test our login features, test a bunch of navigation, test adding in items on our home page. And I was just pushing it up to the GitHub repository that I have for this project. So I will show that in a moment. So Jack, how are you doing today? So all of my repositories that are public are at github.com/digitaldrummerj, same as my Twitch name. And the code we've been playing with is actually for the Angular tutorial code repository. There's a whole slew of branches in here. This whole repository is part of a workshop that I typically run at conferences. So you can actually get access to the whole workshop. The lab manual for the workshop is open. And it's the Up and Running with Angular off of digitaldrummerj.me, which is my website. And once you go here, hopefully this link still works, since I know I've changed that URL to my new company. So yeah, so Let Your Nerd Be Heard is my actual company. And so it is behind an email wall, but I won't spam you with any kind of email or anything. But it is a really cool tutorial that you can actually run through. Takes you from 0 to 100 with Angular, so you can do a typical line of business application. And Jack, I am doing great today. Hey, thank you so much for asking. I will be streaming again on Friday, and I believe I'm set it up for 9 a.m. Arizona time, or 8 a.m. Pacific time, or 10 a.m. Eastern time. And I'm going to continue working on this Cypress project. And so it has been a fantastic day working on Cypress, learning all kinds of stuff on Cypress. So Jack, I encourage you to follow me so you know when I go live again, and you can see all the work that we're going to be doing on Cypress. I'm actually building up to a conference talk. So I will be in Knoxville in April at the CodeStock conference talking about Cypress. I'm going to also be in NDC, Minnesota at the beginning of May talking about it. And right before NDC, Minnesota, about a week before, I will be at Stir Trek in Columbus talking about it as well. And so since you mentioned React, all the stuff I'm doing with Cypress is totally framework agnostic. As long as you can get access to a DOM element in the browser, you can write Cypress tests to automate all of your UI stuff. I just happen to be using Angular because that's my framework of choice. But I am totally not against any of the other frameworks. My opinion on all the frameworks and all the languages is whichever one is solving your problems and you are happy with is the one that you should use. Because there's not one that's better than the other. There's just preferences. I just prefer Angular because that's what I've been using for a while. And Jack, thank you for the follow as well. And And so I'm going to wrap up the stream for today, but thank you again, and it has been a pleasure.